We are Rogue Media Sports.
Have you ever brought your magic to Walt Disney World like, hey, we came to play? Did you tip your tiara to a Creole princess or get goofy officially? When we come through, it's true magic, because we came to play at Walt Disney World Resort.
Rack your look for spring at Nordstrom Rack and save up to 60% on brands you love. Rag & Bone, Vince, Marc Jacobs, Adidas, Joe's, and more. Great brands, great prices every day at Nordstrom Rack. Score new dresses, denim, sandals, designer bags, and sunglasses, plus updates for the family and home. Get your spring on for less, up to 60% less, today at your Nordstrom Rack store. What will you find?
It is the Doomsday podcast. Late. We've got Ed in Nashville, Frito Nation Productions, Frito and I hanging out in far north Dallas. And Ed, I got to say, I thought ESPN, as we started to see Derrick Henry and every other meaningful Titans player, and then the announcement that Josh Dobbs, and oh, by the way, it's not because, it's mainly because Malik Willis had played so poorly that they would rather try to roll out a guy that got there 8 days ago to see if he had anything that would help them in their huge game next week. But I got to say, Ed, I was kind of like, should ESPN would they have sent Ed had they known that Tennessee was not going to play anybody?
I wondered that myself. And I guess the lesson, here is you should never assume victory in the NFL, even if the opponent essentially forfeits before the game ever begins. I mean, the Titans were 14-point underdogs. That's the longest odds for the Titans-Oilers franchise since 1974. And I had said, if not for the IR designations of Ryan Tannehill and Bud Dupree a few hours before the game, that the Titans head coach Mike Vrabel was going to present to the officials the greatest list of inactive players in the history of the league. Like a list that included Derrick Henry and Jeffrey Simmons and Danico Autry, as it was. And then he had Tannehill and Dupree to that list. I mean, Derrick Henry accounts for an NFL high 38% of his team's scrimmage yards this year. That's the most in the NFL. Josh Jacobs is 35%. Vrabel told me before the game, I talked to him right before I went and did my last live shot for SportsCenter. He told me before the game that they were going to have 22 players in uniform tonight for the game who were either elevated from the practice squad at one point this season or who were simply signed as street free agents, including their starting quarterback, Josh Dobbs, who I think the Cowboys beat him to Nashville. I mean, he got here 8 days ago, but so that's a little exaggeration for the intent of humor, which that's acceptable in my book. But I mean, he had never started an NFL game, and he hadn't played a snap in an NFL game in 2 years, and they choose him over, like you said, Malik Willis, their third round draft pick, because Malik Willis has in 3 starts, no 100-yard passing games, no touchdown passes. He's rushed for a touchdown. And I talked to Dan Quinn before the game and asked him, I mean, did you see this coming? Did you prepare at all for Josh Dobbs? And he said, absolutely not. We thought we were facing Willis. We had no idea we were going to be facing this guy. So it's kind of remarkable. I mean, the way the Titans play, they're such a physical team, and that has an effect on their team's health and the opposing team's health. They started tonight. They've played the most guys in the league, 82 this year. Last year, they led the NFL 91. The attrition rate is higher in Nashville than it is anywhere else because of the way they play. And I thought it was interesting. I'll finish with this and we can get to the music and everything. But, there's a perception around the league. I've talked to people around the league in front office positions who think the Cowboys can't win against physical teams. And the teams I think they have in mind are the 49ers and the Eagles. But while, we might argue about how well they look tonight. I mean, they were probably uglier. The game was probably uglier than Tony Romo's Christmas sweater that he wore the other night next to Jim Lance on Christmas night doing that game. but maybe they do deserve a little bit of credit for beating the Eagles 4 days later on the road. Nobody does this turnaround very well and plays Thursday night. You see them play well against a physical team. Yeah, they were depleted, definitely. I mean, they were playing guys so far down on the roster that they almost didn't exist. And I think we saw a lot of Mike Vrabel's personality evident in the way this team plays. So give them credit. Yeah, the Cowboys caught a break. Both teams played backup quarterbacks. The Cowboys, this is the first 2 weeks the Cowboys have played a backup quarterback all year. So remarkable timing from that point of view. Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys win 12 games back-to-back. Are they going to do any more with it this year in the postseason than they did last year? I think that's the debate, especially with the quarterback turning the football over.
Okay, lots to break down here. And an epic rant, speaking of the quarterback, from Stretch. Glenn Stretch Smith will occur. Stretch has been on this for a while. And we'll also talk, Ed, about Mike McCarthy taking exception. You kind of have to use the right word, apparently, when talking about the interceptions that Dak has thrown. Frito, please play the music. All right, and we want to also thank Marable Homes. MarableHomes.com. Oh, I believe it was over on the corner, like Overlook, and maybe I was on Chiswell the other night and saw a gorgeous Marable home going up. And it's custom homes. They do a brilliant job. They've been our presenting sponsor this year, and we are so grateful and just been tremendous having them on board. And Marable Homes, you'll see them in Preston Hollow. You'll see them at Cedar Creek Lake. You certainly see them in Lake Highlands. MarableHomes.com. Keep Blake Marable in mind. Does an incredible job, and that's why people keep going back to them, because they just handle their business in such a great manner, and we love having them as part of the Doomsday podcast. Now, Ed has just come from the stadium. I mean, he's just moments away. And Ed, they were showing, what I could tell is the TV broadcast, which locally, it's kind of interestingly, they put the Amazon, which I'm a member of, but for local folks to get the Cowboys game, they put the Amazon broadcast on Fox 4. And so that was kind of interesting. And so you could watch it however you wanted. I turned it over to Fox because I'm used to watching games there, and then got to watch Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit call the game. What I could tell, Ed, is that they had prepared for a blowout. They had a lot of information, but they couldn't really get to it because the game ended up being a lot closer than people anticipated. I think they wanted to spend more time on the renderings of the new stadium there. Ed, isn't that weird? I feel like the Titans haven't been the Titans that long, and they're already needing to build this gorgeous indoor type stadium. I think on all of these, especially a smaller market team like the Titans or Jacksonville, I think there's this pressure to build these stadiums. Was there any, as you kind of made your way around the streets of Nashville and maybe even took a peek over at Ryman Auditorium, was anybody talking about the possibility of a new stadium?
I was alone in my room for 2 days working on my material for the game, and I really didn't ever walk around the city to any extent, so I really can't speak to that. But I think there is an excitement about having a new stadium here. There's sadness on my part, and that of all the media, because this stadium currently has the best press box in football from a vantage point in terms of it's low, it's just below or just above the first deck, below the second deck. You have great sight lines. Like, it's what we used to have at Texas Stadium right as Jerry bought the team. And before he moved, decided, hey, all these people who are here for free, who criticize me all the time, they can go watch this from the roof. Let's move the press box way up there into the 8th level, and let's put my rich friends into these nice seats that the press normally occupies. And that's carried on throughout the league. So this is the one exception, but I'm sure those fans who sat out in that record cold last week watching the game, or who assembled for this game and it was raining, I'm sure they'll appreciate being, if not indoors, at least covered in the new stadium.
All right. And, Ed, Ford Field for me, I always kind of enjoyed that level, and maybe it was because that, and then also when we would be in the old Minneapolis, the Metrodome, they would have it open where you could hear the crowd and stuff. I like those kinds of things. I don't like the sterile environments of most press boxes where you can't really hear the crowd and stuff. And I don't know, maybe that's just me, but that's kind of the way I look at it. All right, Ed, breaking down this game, let's start with the Cowboys. What happened in the first half that allowed Tennessee to hang around and for Dobbs to finally kind of get a little comfortable? I mean, I thought he played pretty well at times, but the 3 turnovers in the first half, and Ed, that's what you were asking McCarthy about after the game. It's what other reporters were asking McCarthy about, and it's what we have to keep talking about, because as good as the numbers can be from Dak Prescott, almost every game there is a head scratcher. Now, sometimes we can go, oh, this is on the receiver. Obviously, Hendershot dropped one of those interceptions. It went right off his chest or out of his arms.
Like the Noah Brown
arms.
play.
Correct. But the throw that set up the field goal that made it 10-6 was just awful. I mean, it was trying to fit a ball in, and there's almost to Schultz. He throws it behind him, and the guy makes a nice play on the ball. But again, Ed, this is a quarterback. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of amazing that we continue to see this.
Kevin Byard, who had the 2 interceptions tonight for the Titans, is one of the best safeties in all of football and one of the few real starters that were aligned against the Cowboys tonight. So maybe try to avoid him as much as possible. It seems like there was some other guys you might want to try to target. But, I guess this is kind of the way I came out of the game tonight on this issue. Regardless really of who's at fault here, certainly the interceptions, I think you saw it after the game, they frustrate Dak Prescott, but they don't seem to leave him with any doubts about himself or his team. His critics are certainly another matter, although, he easily dismisses them. But, Prescott has thrown interceptions in 6 straight games. That's the longest streak of his career. His 14 interceptions, again, not all his fault. That's tied for the most in the league, even though he's missed 5 games with an injury. He's had 5 games with multiple interceptions, tied for the most in the league with Josh Allen of Buffalo. 3 consecutive possessions, as you mentioned, against the Titans end with turnovers to conclude the first half. That's the first time that's happened in the Prescott era. So to me, it's all very perplexing because that's not really been Prescott's history. And yet this issue now emerges as the most obvious flaw in the Cowboys, hope for postseason success that has for so long eluded the franchise. They've won 12 games now in consecutive seasons under Mike McCarthy for the first time since 1994, 1995. But my sense is, and I think a lot of people feel this way, that this year's going to have the same ending as last year unless Dak better protects the football.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's something he's proven he's capable of doing over time. This is really the aberration. What's happened this year is the exception. This didn't happen to him for the previous 6 years of his career. He's never had a year like this where he's been so prone to interceptions. And he said it himself after the game, hey, the only time anybody stops us is when we make a mistake to stop ourselves. Right. Exactly. That's the point. You have to stop doing that. I mean, what happens if they have 3 turnovers against a team that can score?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if this had happened against the Eagles, they would have lost last week. They won because their defense took the ball away 3 times and they only turned it over once. It was a pick 6. But yeah, this just can't continue to happen, or they're going to be out earlier than they think.
I kind of think here's how my takeaway. If Dobbs had 14 days instead of 8 days, the Titans win this game.
Well, they only scored 6 points off the turnovers. What if a team would have scored 21 points off the turnovers?
I like this Dobbs. I like his parents. Golly, I don't know if you ever caught Did you catch any of the views of his parents from the press box? Did you ever see them?
No,
his parents they're a trip. They were having
trouble.
He's
a highly intelligent guy. McCarthy, after he finished his press conference and after Dak was done, I was sitting in the press conference room and writing something for the TV tonight or tomorrow morning. And Mike walked back through and we talked a little about Dobbs. And he's like, he's a guy I remember when he was with Pittsburgh. Whatever happened to him in Pittsburgh? Why did he not make the team in Pittsburgh? And I obviously it was because they drafted Pickett with a first round pick, even after Ben Roethlisberger retired. So he was a little confused. He knew the guy and has a high opinion of him. I'm sure it's even higher now after what he did against the Dallas defense. But, to kind of finish from my point of view on the offense, Tennessee played great run defense, which is what they always do, even though they didn't have their best players.
No,
they played great run. I think the Cowboys ran it 19 times for 33 yards on first down. So it's 2nd and 8 every time. So they were forced to throw the ball more than they wanted to. This is what they did tonight is not their formula for success with Dak Prescott throwing it 25 times in the first half. But they couldn't run. I think they really missed Tony Pollard. This is the first game that Pollard has missed all year. He's 12 yards from his first 1,000-yard rushing season. He's probably going to be the first player since Zeke was drafted in 2016, other than Zeke, to lead the Cowboys in rushing, depending on what happens next week in Washington. But I thought they just really missed his big play ability. They don't have a lot of speed and a lot of playmakers. CeeDee Lamb certainly is, but he's attracting an awful lot of attention. I think obviously T.Y. Hilton's making a difference in a very positive way, and that should only continue as he evolves. Michael Gallup has become no more prominent. Noah Brown's terribly inconsistent. So when Tony Pollard's missing, they hurt for his absence.
All right. And to your point earlier about 14 interceptions, how many games did Dak miss this year?
5.
Okay. And he's got 14 interceptions. And again, I know we can't, one team has 12 wins and the other team I'm about to mention, their quarterback has like 4 or 5 wins, but Derek Carr, just his career looks like it's over in the Raiders land, and they just benched him for the last 2 games. How many interceptions does he have, Ed?
He's tied for the lead. He's tied with 14. Tom Brady's getting up there in terms of recent streaks of throwing the most interceptions, and he's probably going to win a division and make the playoffs. It might be the Cowboys' first round opponent. The other guy who's thrown a lot of interceptions, I mentioned him, Josh Allen. Who wouldn't want Josh Allen leading their playoff team? But he's the one that's tied with Dak with these 5 games of multiple interceptions. Yeah. Patrick Mahomes has thrown a lot of interceptions this year. But this is just not who Dak has been.
No.
I don't think his team is good enough to consistently overcome that number of mistakes. They're just not good enough on defense. Their defense right now is reduced to like we said last week. I think they're the same defense that finished last season. Like they'll get a lot of takeaways, but they're going to give up a lot of yards, and they potentially might give up a lot of points if they play the wrong team.
Yeah, and by the way, if you give up a lot of yards, but you still get a lot of takeaways, and your offense is really good and doesn't turn it over, you can go to a Super Bowl. You can win a Super Bowl. Like that's how the Saints were back in, when they won the Super Bowl. They didn't have a great defense. They just had a ton of takeaways on that defense. It complemented a great offense, if I remember correctly. Ed, you were like basically embedded with that team, but I think that's kind of what I remember. By the way, the Mike McCarthy quote after the game, when he was pressed about, and you were one of the people asking him about these interceptions, which I appreciated. He tried to kind of dismiss it, and he loves to talk about how great Dak is at not being impacted by, these negative plays and never changing and all that kind of stuff. But he said, I think this is when you pressed him on the point. He said, talking about the interceptions, one was a drop. One was a minus decision. It's obviously talking about the throw to Schultz. Whether we don't get any style points, that's okay. We're still at 12 wins. So now I do think he took some ownership in the mistakes. And I think Mike at least understands that, the way that game played out, it was not overly impressive. and he should understand why they have some concerns. And oh, by the way, Ed, in addition to these quarterback concerns, the Biotish being in a walking boot, quite honestly, as bad as it looked, to see him back out there in a boot, honestly looked better than what I thought it was going to be. At least they didn't have to cart him off the field. But this is going to put even more stress on this O-line, and it moves everybody around as they finish that game. Tyler Smith was playing next to Jason Peters.
Peters was playing left tackle.
Yeah.
Tyler Smith, the rookie, moved from left tackle to left guard. Connor McGovern went from left guard to center. And you've already got Tyron Smith playing out of position at right tackle. So, but I mean, credit to them for having a guy like Jason Peters available to come off the bench and play. And he's been an important part of that throughout the course of the season. But yeah, I mean, their inability to run the ball tonight, I think, was a concern. I just think McCarthy felt good about, hey, this is a tough thing to do. It's tough to go play the Eagles for, the number one team in the league and the leader in your division, and go win that game. And then 4 nights later, you're in Tennessee playing the Titans. And I mean, they're fortunate they played a backup quarterback. They're fortunate that they played a bunch of guys who, don't normally get the kind of playing time that they got tonight, aren't in the starting lineup. But and what McCarthy even made a point to say, well, you know what happens too is when these young guys who aren't used to being starters, who don't get playing time, are suddenly relied upon like this, they see it as their breakthrough opportunity, and they play with a lot of energy, and they're fully healthy, and and there's probably some truth in that. But I think he wanted a little bit more credit. I think in his mind, this was a really grueling stretch that they were going through, these 3 games in 12 days, and the Eagles being one of them, and Tennessee being another one. And that they probably, in his mind, came out of it better than he feared they might.
All right. No team plays more games in like 12 days than the Cowboys, because it's always around Thanksgiving, and you turn around and do it again. And so it does seem to come up a lot with this organization. Okay, now it's time. It's interesting to hear this analysis. Our former Cowboy scout and coach, Glenn Stretch Smith, with his stretch plays in the aftermath of the Cowboys' 27-13 win on the road in Tennessee. And Stretch, let's go through a few facets of this, but I want to do some big picture stuff, because it's really hard to judge anything against a team missing that many players, a quarterback that just got there 8 days ago. And I don't know how much to read into the fact that the Cowboys really didn't put that thing away until the fourth quarter. Overall, I mean, I guess my overall thought, Stretch, and I wanted to bounce this against you before we even get into the quarterback and some of these other facets. I have a feeling of concern. Tennessee didn't have anything to play for, yet they hung in there. You kind of have to admire the way they fought, but a huge part of it was Cowboys' mistakes. And then, of course, you get Biotish hurt. You had other players banged up in the game. Stretch, I saw nothing in that game. And I know people say, oh, you can't, you got to celebrate every victory. But I saw nothing that was convincing about, like, this team's ready to make a deep playoff run.
Well, and I'm not going to disagree with you, but what I am going to say is, this is a football team that's back-to-back years have won 12 games, and people are going to say, well, I hear it all the time, well, Stretch, you're nitpicking, or you're getting after, your style point in a win. I don't like style point in a win. I like calling it the way that I see it, and that's what I try to do. I try to bring it with, the same passion that I do about the game. And quite frankly, to watch that tonight, I feel like I lost about 4 points off my football IQ. It's one of those things where I think it is a concern, Matt, and I think you make good points. It's there are some things right now that, to me, really concern me about this football team. And I think we've talked about them the last few weeks, and certainly it's something we'll touch on tonight.
Okay, we'll get to the quarterback, because I think at times people thought you were too hard on Dak. Some of the things that concerns you over the last several weeks keep coming up, and I do want you to sound off on that. Let's start with the defense. For much of this game, and I know he threw the big pick late that kind of ended things. Nashawn Wright made a nice play, but Dobbs, he moved well. He threw the ball well, and then of course they hit on some run plays. What was your kind of overall feeling about how the defense functioned? I would say at times there was a pass rush. Micah, gave them some problems, and of course some of those false starts were people being worried about Micah. So you have to give him credit for that. But overall sort of pass rush and the way this team lined up and played against a very inexperienced quarterback, in terms of he's been around the league for a while, but he has not played a lot in the league.
Yeah, no, I did see some things out of the defensive front that I thought give you reason to say, okay, they got some pressure with 4. They brought 5 at times. I like when that Parsons doesn't have to be the guy coming off the edge. We saw him come off the center some. We saw him come inside. We saw him put Williams and Lawrence on one side so they could get the guard and the tackle isolated while leaving the shade on the backside to take up the center. I like the defensive game plan, but I thought defensive front, I thought they played okay. I saw some good things out of Lawrence. I saw him run and chase the ball, which, that's what you want to see. You don't want to have to coach effort with those guys. I saw some good things from Gallimore. I saw some good things from multiple guys up front, and I think that's Bohanna. I think those guys are going to have to continue to play. And I gave that group a B. I thought linebackers did a good job, Matt. I thought you saw, again, you saw Clark get in the game. You saw Jabril Cox. I mean, you're seeing some guys that you're like, who is that? Who's 14 and they're playing at linebacker? And those guys are getting experience. So I still think this football team, from a box standpoint, they missed Van Der Esch. And I'm talking about inside between the tackles, a guy that can come downhill and play the run. And hopefully, we'll get an injury update on him or his progress through his rehab. But I thought the linebackers gave you a B. And then secondary wise, they got a little banged up late. I saw CJ Goodwin had to come in and play. And so, you got the pick out of Nashawn. And I thought defensively they did what they needed to do to win the football game. And so I gave really everybody on the defensive side of the board a B across the way. I thought that you saw some really good things again out of Sam Williams, and I think he's going to have to continue to pressure you. I think Anthony Barr is going to have to continue to play and be physical inside. So he showed he can do that. I think Dorrance Armstrong coming back, he's starting to look healthy again. And so the defense, if they can stay healthy, and I'm saying where you've got those safeties back there, you got Hooker, you got Wilson. I mean, bringing the wood and playing downhill. I think those are all good things. So I don't have a concern defensively about this football team right now. But I thought tonight they just kind of gave you where it was you borderline wanted to say, okay, God dang, I love seeing Lawrence run and chase. I love seeing Lawrence get pressure. I love seeing batting the ball at the line of scrimmage. And then you'll see him give up, a big run or, where they don't get the right gap. And so that really is what kept them from getting a great grade. All things saying they played good enough football to win tonight.
All right. And I would say I would only add to that it was good to see Williams back in there, the rookie who'd had the car wreck. Fowler comes in, gets the sack and the strip that Micah recovered. So were some good plays. They allowed 97 rushing yards against a very short-handed team behind a banged-up offensive line for Tennessee. So some concerns there, but I think you were very fair to the Cowboys defense. Now, let's spend some time on the offensive side of the ball. The Cowboys only ran for 87 yards. The onus then was on Dak Prescott. And we've seen time and time again, especially against, teams that are better than but they struggle with bad teams. And this is kind of like tonight's team was severely understaffed. I would say the Titans. I wouldn't call the Titans a bad team overall, but tonight they were just very, very short-staffed and did not have it. Were not up to speed. The running game. You got Zeke. They rested Pollard. I think Malik Davis. I thought there were moments where obviously he showed his speed, but overall, the run game was not there, which caused the Cowboys to have to lean on Dak maybe more than they wanted to.
Well, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, I think he threw it 25 or 26 times in the first half. They're not going to win in the playoffs with that. They're just not. Again, this is a Tennessee defense that I don't care, that they were missing one or two guys in their front. The bottom line is they're very sound in what they do, and they've been that way all year. And statistically, if you look at it, what they're able to do against the run game, they're really pretty good. Now, we got Davis hit them for a 24-yard ISO, and there were some bright spots there. I did like seeing the fact that Dallas would toss the ball, try to get outside of all that stunting and stemming, which their defensive line does a ton of, to get you in some bad plays. And I thought that at least gave them a chance to, like I said, give Davis the ball some. Zeke didn't have a very productive night, but he's a more physical inside runner, and he still, scored down there on the goal line and stuck it in. I don't think it's fair to really grade hard on the offensive line when guys are stunting and stemming around and just say, okay, well, we're gonna put it on the run game. I thought that they pass protected really pretty well. I liked that. Even when Biotis went down, they were able to move McGovern to center. They moved Smith down. Peters is still physical enough to be able to play that tackle side. He's physical enough to come in and be the other tight end in those heavy situations on the goal line. I like that they show that, because I think that gives other teams things to work on. But I thought the offensive line, played pretty well tonight. I do think when you think about, man, the running backs, and we're kind of talking about them 1 and 2, I do like that, Davis does have some, he's got some juice, and you saw him getting the ball on those swing routes, and he can do some things with the football. So I gave those guys a winning grade as well. Tight ends, I mean, Hendershot cannot drop the football. Go attack the football with your hands. That was a big turnover. And if the team is going to trust you to put you in those situations, you can't drop the football in that situation. So for that, the tight ends got a barely a winning grade and a C. And then I think receivers wise, I like what they're doing with Hilton. I think he's still got some juice. I mean, you saw him set up that inside slant, which I like that, when he kind of cut the split down and then you widen as if you're gonna run the go route, and you slam and rip back underneath him. He still shows the ability to scare defenses. I like that he ran the shallow and picked up the big 14-yard completion on 3rd and 9. So there's some things that I really like out of the receivers, and I think this receiving core, I like the addition of Hilton, and I think they're good enough to win with, and I gave those guys a B as well.
Okay, and I agree with you on Hilton. He's brought just more credibility. I thought Noah had a bad drop in this game. I got to, I think we he's done some really good things this season. And I think he let one get away from him, sort of a lack of concentration. You're right. Hendershot can't let that happen. And then the throw, Schultz came back and had some really good plays, got in the end zone a couple of times. There's really nothing he can do on that bad ball that Dak threw. And Stretch, that leads me to the quarterback play. And it's been, this head coach constantly finds himself kind of having to defend Dak. And of course, Dak generally comes back and ends up with pretty solid numbers. And you hear announcers in these TV games, especially on the Amazon call tonight, kind of having to, they're like, he did throw the couple of interceptions and he had the fumble, but overall pretty good night for him. Now, I would just say the biggest concern, Stretch, and you hit on this a while back, and people thought you were being too hard on Dak. But the fact that you got 3 turnovers in the first half, 2 of which you could argue were Dak's fault, the fumble and then the throw behind Dalton Schultz. Walk us through that throw, Stretch, on the Schultz interception, which was a really bad one and allowed them to make it 10-6 at halftime. And just how concerned are you that he can't seem to get away from these interceptions?
It's very concerning, and it keeps happening. Quit turning the football over. Quit turning the ball over. They won't beat anybody. I don't give a rip who they play, whether it's New Orleans in the first round, whether it's Tampa in the first round. They will not win a playoff game if he turns the football over. And they're not going to do it. He's got to quit turning the football over. Now, on the option that he threw to Schultz, I mean, it's a cover 2, and you see the corner outside, you see the nickel safety inside, and it's one of those things where you look at that and you think, why would you try to fit that ball in there? He has no chance. He had no chance to throw it outside. He threw it underneath, and it got picked. The other thing that was concerning to me is when he took the sack late in the football game, and they're trying to put the game away, and CD is on his right, acts like he's going to run a deep cross, breaks it high to the corner. He's bracketed. Corner drops the safety to that side, so he's bracketed. He sees that he's bracketed. He comes off of that, and he looks backside to Gallup, who's got a post with the safety sitting in the middle of the field, and he sees that he can't throw the post either. Throw it away. Don't take a sack. And I keep going over these things and saying he does so many things that make me question what are you seeing? And I can see his eyes. I can see his helmet look right and left, and him not throw the football away. I just don't know, and it scares me to say this because I question his football acumen. I really do. It makes me wonder what is he seeing and what has taken him so long to make decisions. I mean, this game is about quick decisions, and you got paid $40 million. You can't turn the ball over. You got to live to fight another day. And in some situations, it's okay to throw it away. It's okay to throw that ball away. How many quarterbacks do we see come off the sideline, whether it's Tom Brady or whoever, with the red ass that they got the wrong call at the wrong time, and they come over and they kind of they don't like the call at that time. And that's okay to do that. I've got to see more of things to me that are instinctive in the game of football from this quarterback. And right now, I don't see that. And quite frankly, I'm just telling you the way it is. If he doesn't quit turning the football over, they'll be one and done in the playoffs, and then who knows what will happen, here in the Metroplex.
Yeah, and to your point, with the contract the way it is, the owner and the head coach, I mean, they're always going to be quick to defend him. And Mike McCarthy, after the game, it was no different. And so it'll be interesting to see. I mean, and, I hear what you're saying. What's so strange to me is he's had different issues here and there over his career. But one of the things that he was praised for, and I think correctly praised for, was taking care of the football and not making mistakes for a lot of his career, starting with his rookie season. So it is strange, I would say, when you should kind of be at the peak of your powers at age 29. He's in the sweet spot as an NFL quarterback as far as like being at the peak. And of course, he probably has 5 to 7 more years where he should be in pretty good shape to play. And it is truly concerning. And maybe he'll get it right and get it cleaned up. But the fact that he's still doing it, and the thing is, I brought this up before, it's like he says all the right things. Like he displays so many great leadership traits, but it doesn't really matter, does it, when these kind of things keep happening? And I think people dismiss it sometimes and go, well, they won the game. They won the game. Who cares? Well, again, if one of these things crops up, or you make a poor decision, or you look at the end of the game in that playoff game last year, against San Francisco, these things have a way of coming back around. And right now, he is in a bad groove. And even the announcers in the game tried to bring it up, but they kind of glossed over it. It's like people are a little bit worried to criticize him or something.
Well, and it is hard because at one time in the game, until those last 3 possessions, they were 8 of 10 on third down conversions. I mean, think about that. I mean, 8 of 10, hell, it's hard to go 8 of 10 against air. And so the fact that, he does convert, he does make some throws, he does see some things, makes some correct checks at times. But I'm telling you, you got to quit turning the football over. And I'm going to finish kind of by saying this. And one of the biggest regrets that I have in my time with the Cowboys is one year, and I want to say, I don't remember if it might have been Chan Gailey or it could have been Campo's first year. He brought all the coaches in, and we actually had to go in and clinic the rest of the staff on what we taught positionally, and really felt like it would help the staff to know, hey, this is the techniques that everybody's, that we're teaching and, understanding, okay, Stretch, you got the tight ends, but understand what Mike Zimmer's doing, coaching this technique. But I heard Wade Wilson get up, and God rest his soul, and he played in he played quarterback in the West Coast, the Ernie Zampese, the run and shoot, Jimmy Mora. He played in every offense you could play in the NFL. But he got up and he spoke for 3 hours on what a quarterback thinks from the time he gets the play in his ear until the time the ball is snapped. That about 11, 10, 12-second window, he talked for 3 hours about it. And he talked about going through in your mind in that quick a time frame what the quarterback does, what can hurt the play, what's the front, what's the coverage, what's the leverage of the safeties, what's the leverage of the corners, the levels of the safety. He went through every bit of that, and he spoke on it for 3 hours. And to think that that's put into a 9 or 10-second window, and you have to do it over and over and over, it makes you think about, really, that's why they pay the guys so much money. But when you got a quarterback that doesn't feel like he's processing that information that quickly, it's something that really sticks with me. And yeah, I guess I could, I could be hard on him. I mean, I saw a guy that has a gold jacket do it for my entire time there.
Yeah.
Maybe that's unfair for that to be my measuring stick, but that's what it is.
Maybe he'll play beautifully in the next few weeks and get this cleaned up. It just has been a disturbing time. Although when one reporter after the game called it a rash of interceptions, Mike McCarthy took exception for that. And by the way, you expect the head coach to have his quarterbacks back. Thank you, Stretch. Really well done. I did want to say, most light beer doesn't taste like much of anything. You know that, Stretch. You've tried some of them over the years. If you're one of those people who want their light beer to taste like, well, beer, then Miller Lite is brewed for you. A lot's changed over the years, but one thing that's tried and true is Miller Lite. It's stellar taste. It's light beer. Other light beers wish they were. And Stretch, I just think about over the years and through the holidays and what's coming up, where we're going to kind of gather together and on New Year's Eve, watch all that football. Stretch, you're a big guy who played college football, but you also are a guy who eats pretty healthy and will occasionally mix in some vegetables. Do you find yourself with a Miller Lite just not feeling so heavy? I mean, what's your favorite thing about the Miller Lite?
Well, yeah, it doesn't feel heavy, but what my other favorite thing is that if you have a couple, it can turn you into Guy Fieri, because all of a sudden you're gauging how many times I eat vegetables or not. Mosley, let me say this: I'm a light beer guy. Nothing like a Miller Lite, and I'm glad to have them as a sponsor. But I'm going to finish by saying this: get a damn haircut. You look like a mutt, Mosley.
To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/Doomsday, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. And that was, ladies and gentlemen, something we like to call stretch plays. All right, there it was. And Stretch raising his voice and about some of these takeaways, the turnovers that continue to happen with Dak, and we'll see where all this goes. Now, here's where it is, Ed. The Cowboys get to kind of sit there and root for the New Orleans Saints to beat the Eagles, and then that would set up another scenario where they would need the Eagles to lose again. If the Eagles do win,
it's the Giants, I think, right? The final week of the season is the Giants. The Cowboys play at Washington, and the Eagles play the Giants.
Yes.
In week 18.
So this is doable. I still feel like it's unlikely, but you got to play this thing out. And I think Ed, there are worse things than having a scenario that causes the Cowboys to have to try to keep going and maybe find some kind of momentum here. You especially think after that big win over the Eagles last week. So I don't know if obviously if the Eagles lose this weekend, the Cowboys will not put their best foot forward the following week. Don't you agree? I mean, I say that. What I mean is they'll rest a lot of people in that final game.
You mean if the Eagles clinch the division and the number one seed by beating the Saints? I think they've done the right thing to this point in terms of McCarthy playing to win the game tonight and trying to put the Eagles in a position where they're feeling pressure. And, they don't want to play Jalen Hurts, who's injured. They don't want to play Jalen Hurts right now. They want Jalen Hurts to get healthy, maybe have a month off, and then, appear in the divisional round of the playoffs for the first time since he suffered that shoulder injury against the Bears. But the Cowboys are putting pressure on the Eagles to consider, geez, maybe we better go ahead and play Jalen Hurts. We got to wrap this thing up because there's a lot at stake. I mean, there's a huge difference between being the number one seed and being the fifth seed. It's all about spending all of the playoffs on the road, where the Cowboys have already lost 3 times on the road, or it's getting a first round bye and playing all of your postseason games at home, where the Cowboys have gone 8-1 this year at home. So it's a huge difference. So I like the fact that they're making the Eagles think about, well, what's life going to be like without Lane Johnson? Geez, do we want to put Jalen Hurts back there without his right tackle? Do we want to run Jalen Hurts with his shoulder injury when we don't know how early we're going to have to play in the postseason? Is he going to be the same passer with his shoulder injury that he was before? Who knows any of those things? I just think they're putting the Eagles in as difficult a situation as a 13-2 team can be put in.
Yeah, Ed, we had given up on the thought of the Cowboys having another home game. Should I be applying for a credential or something?
I think you might want to I think it's probably a long shot, but I like the fact that they're playing it out, and it can only serve them well in the end as long as no prominent players suffer any significant injuries. But yeah, I mean, you got to give them credit for winning 12 games back to back. That hasn't been done in a really long time. And now they need to do something with it. You know, that's what everybody wants to see. There's all kinds of people who doubt this team, and what happened tonight is only going to make those voices louder. But, you know, Dak Prescott, it doesn't bother Dak, I don't think. I think that McCarthy coaches the quarterbacks. And if you look at his history, he's had, I mean, Favre, I guess, might be the exception, but generally his quarterbacks have not thrown a lot of interceptions. And this quarterback has not thrown a lot of interceptions. And I think he's very self-aware, and he understands that he has to be better in that regard. And he'll do everything in his power to be better in that aspect of the game. He knows how important it is. I think, and as much as we might want to criticize the defense for showing some weakness the last couple of weeks without, Jonathan Hankins in the run game, without Leighton Vander Esch, now down to their fourth corner at right corner opposite Trayvon Diggs. I think the thing you have to give them credit for is they keep taking the ball away. They keep setting the offense up on short fields. And tonight, the good thing that they did is they minimized the damage from the 3 turnovers the Cowboys had on offense.
They did. And Nashawn Wright had the big pick, and Bland had some good pass rushes, actually. And Donovan Wilson from his safety spot had a sack. And, of course, Dante Fowler had a big strip sack. So some good things from the defense. And I did want to say, before we signed off, thank you, Lakeside Roofing, also family-owned full-service roofing company serving the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And with the highest quality roofing products paired with the highest quality workmanship. Lakeside Roofing Company, lakesideroofco.com. I've got a bad leak at the house, but it's under the house. But I feel like Lakeside Roofing could help me somehow. But we've had the plumbers over today, Ed. All sorts of excitement here at the house.
Sounds like no fun.
Oh, yeah. Oh, just a great way to spend your holidays, just paying exorbitant prices to have some folks come in and tell you have big problems. All right, Ed, Happy New Year to you. Your family's been traveling. You've had to travel. I really hope you get to maybe see them, check in with your wife and daughter. Please tell them I said hello. And Ed, my New Year's resolution is for the two of us to spend even more time together. How about that?
I'll have to think about my New Year's resolution.
It doesn't seem like that one really resonates with you. All right. Maybe more Peloton. Maybe we'll ride more.
More playoff time together.
More playoff time together
more road games together.
Oh, man.
You could get me out of my room and I could go around and see the sights and interact with the people and provide a better sense of what society's like outside of Dallas.
Yeah. You'll want to be getting out of your room because I'll be bunking up with you probably to save money. All right. For Ed Werder and Mark Friedman and Frito Nation Productions, this is Matt Mosley. Good night from far north Dallas.
You have haven't heard about the McCrispy yet? Well, then, you probably haven't heard the sweet silence after the first crispy bite either. Go try it for yourself to hear the best nut sound you've ever heard.
Walmart Plus members save on meeting up with friends. Save on having them over for dinner with free delivery with no hidden fees or markups. That's groceries, plus napkins, plus that vegetable chopper to make things a bit easier. Plus, members save on gas to go meet them in their neck of the woods. Plus, when you're ready for the ultimate sign of friendship, start a show together with your included Paramount Plus subscription. Walmart Plus members save on this plus so much more. Start a 30-day free trial at walmartplus.com. Paramount Plus Essential Plan only. Separate registration required. See Walmart Plus terms and conditions.